What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. Today I'm doing something a little bit different. I've not done a video like this before. I've seen other people on kind of football channels and stuff do it. It's early FPL predictions. Obviously, we don't have fixtures and stuff yet, but there's still a lot of predictions, a lot of players that people think are going to do well. And I put a tweet out asking for your FPL predictions. So this is where I've taken them from. And I'm basically going to go through them one by one. Not every single one. There was loads of replies on the tweets, more than I usually have. But I'm going to go through the ones that I've selected and basically talk about whether I think that might come true, why it might not come true, and obviously link it back to FPL and tell you why I think that player is a bad option, why I think it's a good option, what kind of factors are going to determine the prediction and stuff like that. So if you enjoy this new kind of content, make sure to give it a like, much appreciated. Subscribe if you are new around here. It doesn't cost you anything. I really would consider doing that as well. Help me get to that 100,000 mark by the end of the season, hopefully. Otherwise, I'll jump into this one. Okay, so we'll start off with FPL Walter, who says Bruno Fernandes will get the most FPL points this year. I got to be honest, as much as I'd love to say yes as a Man United fan, I'm getting him in at 10.5 million. He's going to score loads of points all season. I'm not necessarily sure he will. Now, I will say from the start, season total points don't really matter because we have transfers. We don't have to keep players in for the entire season. It's not the worst shout in the world. The one thing is, obviously, penalties were a big factor. It's hard to completely disagree that Bruno Fernandes will score a lot of points because since he came into the league, he's matching the likes of Salah and Bruyne for points per match, even beating them for a lot of the time when he was in. Now, he only kind of played, for the latter half of the season. He wasn't playing in the first half of the season because he wasn't at Man United. But he did do extremely well. One of the reasons was penalties, like I said. 14 penalties in the league last year. Now, obviously, you can't rely on penalties. There's nothing to say we'll get another 14. But the season before that, Man United got 12 penalties. The problem is if you start going back further, you're starting to look at 3 penalties in a season, 4 penalties in a season, 5 in a season. And suddenly that's a big drop in points. We saw Pogba, for example, slightly different setup, to be fair. Obviously, Bruno Fernandes took a lot of the limelight from him. But he suddenly was not anywhere near a good as option when he lost penalties. And I think the same for Bruno Fernandes. He's not going to lose penalties, but is he going to get another 14? Probably not. If you look at things like underlying stats, he kind of overperformed a little bit as well. Some of his assists were just like sideways passes, and then Martial, for example, scored like a bit of a wonder goal, top corner from outside the box. More often than not, you're not going to get an assist for that. So I'm not sat here saying that Bruno Fernandes is not a bad or is a bad option. And like I said, you don't necessarily need a season total to be a good player. You could be just a good player for 7 game weeks, then you transfer them to someone else who could score even more points. But the most FPL points this year, I think Man United would have to get another 12 plus penalties for that to happen. I think Kevin De Bruyne, Sterling, Mane, Salah, they're all players that could easily outscore Bruno Fernandes over the course of a season. But I really hope it does happen. So FPL Lou says, Eiling and Dallas are to be in the top 10 defenders this season. Now again, like I said before, season totals don't necessarily matter. If you've got a team, for example, with kind of Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robertson in it, then the 4.5 million defenders, you don't have to play them every single week. So their season total doesn't necessarily matter. Their points when they're in your team do matter. But top 10 defenders by the end of the season, I just don't buy it. Now, it's not to say that defenders from promoted teams can't do well. We saw Sheffield United do really well last year. And I'm not writing Leeds off by any stretch of the imagination. They're probably the best kind of set team from the promoted teams last season to do well this year. And obviously they are very attacking. I've seen lots of threads about Eiling and Dallas. From what I've read, Dallas isn't necessarily nailed on, and Eiling might be the better option. Are they going to get as many attacking returns as last year? Absolutely not. Are they going to get as many clean sheets? Probably not. So top 10 defenders is difficult. Are they going to beat Trent, Robertson, Van Dijk? No. Are they going to beat Man City defenders? Definitely not if they buy Koulibaly. And then you've got maybe Man United defenders, Leicester defenders, Chelsea defenders to contend with. Like if Chelsea sign a goalkeeper who's much better than Kepa, that can improve their defence. So to get into the top 10 is extremely difficult. I certainly wouldn't write them off though. I'm very happy they came in with a 4.5 million price point. I think if they'd gone to 5 million, then suddenly it's like, well, I'll just have to wait and see. Whereas 4.5, it's a bit of a tempter at the start. So they could be good options, not writing them off, but top 10, no way. FPL McLovin, Matt Doherty will score more points than Van Dijk this season. Now, I'm not saying, again, this is 100% not going to happen, but I don't see it. For me, the reason is not because Matt Doherty is not a great option, because I think he is. And to be fair, if Bolly stays fit for the whole season, they could get close. Because I think one of the problems with Wolves last year is when Bolly wasn't in the team, they didn't keep as many clean sheets. And when he came back, they did really well, and that's probably why he's got a 5.5 million price tag. I think 0.5 more for Matt Doherty is an absolute no-brainer if you're kind of spending that much for a Wolves defender. Now, last year, to be fair, he got close, and that's with Bolly out for a lot of the season, or some of the season. 167 points total for Doherty, 178 for Van Dijk. The thing for me is, Liverpool only kept about 14 clean sheets, I think, last year. I think that's what Trent got anyway. Whereas the season before, Robertson had 21, which is a big difference. Like 7 extra clean sheets, 4 points, that's 28 points, not even taking into account bonus and stuff like that. So for me, there is scope for Doherty to score more than he did last year. And last year, I kind of didn't write him off, but I put him as an avoid at first at 6 million. This year, absolutely not. If Wolves have got good fixtures, I'm going to look at trying to slot him into my side. But the thing for me is, even if Wolves go up in points and Doherty goes up in points, I think Van Dijk will as well. He's absolutely nailed on centre-back. He's very rarely, if at all, going to get rotated. So I think it'll be difficult over a season-long period for Doherty to outscore Van Dijk. I think it'll be very close again. It could happen, but for me, my money would be on Van Dijk. But Doherty is definitely going to be an amazing option this year for sure. Wellboy69 says, Firmino is well worth the risk. I'm not having it. 9.5 million for Firmino. I think it was a mistake to price him like that. I know why he's done it, or why FPL have done it, because he can score well. Right? It's not to say that he can't. And he's in a team that will score lots of goals. Maybe not as many as Man City, but Liverpool will probably be the second highest goal scorers overall again this year. So for 9.5 million for their striker, especially when he's priced 2.5 million less than Salah or Mane, maybe it's a fair price. But the problem is, everyone's drawn to Trent, everyone's drawn to Robertson, everyone will want one of Mane or Salah probably, if not a double up. So to me, Firmino is not really worth the risk. And I don't really like the word risk. For me, there's just much better options in a team that don't rotate very often and that score lots and lots of FPL points. So my money is going to be on the 4 that I've mentioned, maybe even Van Dijk ahead of Firmino. Plus, at 9.5 million, you've got to look at who else is priced like that. Werner, which we'll come on to soon, I think could be a good option. Martial is 0.5 million less at 9 million. Jimenez is 8.5. Ings is 8.5. They're all players that could match Firmino or score more, and they don't take up a Liverpool spot. So forget about the risk. For me, look, maybe if he does extremely well, maybe I'll look at getting him in. But straight away, absolutely not. I don't think he's worth the risk, and he won't be coming anywhere near my team. FPL Tactician says Foden to get 15 plus attacking returns this season. I don't see why not. Obviously, a lot of it's going to depend on how many minutes he gets, which is always the key for Man City players, especially like someone like Foden, who hasn't necessarily completely broken through to be playing week in, week out. Not that many players do that for Man City, but the likes of De Bruyne and Sterling do play most games. He got 7 attacking returns last year, 5 goals, 2 assists. I put him in the value video yesterday, and that was in 888 minutes. So could he get double that and then double the returns? Absolutely. I just think he's going to get more minutes this year. There's going to be plenty of games where he's going to have to be rotated in. I think he's done well enough that Pep might start to trust him now. He tends to play in that front 3 over on the right or left. They've got Sterling to play there. They've got Mahrez, Bernardo Silva can play there. They've signed this Torres guy as well. So there's still a lot of competition, but I do think he's going to get the minutes to justify those kind of returns. Whether or not he's a great option for our teams is hard to say, because we don't know if he's going to play week in, week out. If you get him at the wrong time, it could be awful. But if you get him at the right time, there's a huge amount of points on offer. So 15 plus attacking returns, I certainly wouldn't bet against that this season. So I should apologise if I get any names wrong, but Pierre M, I'm not going to say all the numbers, says Greenwood to finish the season in the top 5 goal scorers if he starts 30 plus games. So whether or not he starts 30 plus games is all going to depend on Sancho. There's talk about Man United now bringing in David Brooks. That's certainly not going to be to play week in, week out. There's no way Greenwood's suddenly going to start getting benched. Not after how well he did last year, and obviously he is still developing. If Sancho comes in, it's a different matter. But obviously it says if he gets 30 plus games. To be in the top 5 goal scorers for the season, obviously that's not FPL points. Again, I'm not sure I see it. I'm not even convinced he would necessarily beat Martial and Rashford, let alone everyone else in the league, like Salah, Mane, Vardy, Ings, Jimenez, whoever it might be. Now, to be fair to him, he did have limited minutes last year and still scored 10 goals. So is it completely kind of off the radar or such a crazy shout that he would be in the top 5 goal scorers? Probably not if he gets 30 plus games. But I don't know. There was at times when he overperformed at the end of llast season, but on the flip side, like I said, he is young, he is still improving, so you might expect to see a few more goals. Top 5 though, I'm not sure about that, to be honest. So Kiri Bakar 27 says Jimenez to outscore Martial, and again, we're talking about season totals here, which don't necessarily matter, but we'll discuss the point anyway. Now last year, Jimenez got 194 points, Martial was 200, but as we know, Martial was listed as a midfielder. If he'd been listed as a forward, he would have got less points. I think people have worked out it's about 175, 180 points he would have got when you factor in clean sheet points, extra points for the goal and stuff like that. So last season, Martial would have scored less. And Jimenez is such a steady scorer. In that Wolves side, it's so settled that I can see him scoring close to 200 points again. Absolutely no problem. Here's the thing with Martial, though. A lot of last season, he played without Fernandes and without Pogba, and he still managed 17 goals, 9 assists. Now, a lot of them, or some of them, were after kind of lockdown when Fernandes was in the team and Pogba was back from injury. But for a lot of it, it was like Lingard, Andreas Pereira, Mata playing a few games as well. That's not such a good side. And we've seen Man United performing a lot better now they've got this set up with kind of the 4 or 5 main attackers. And Martial is spearheading that. So I've seen like interviews, like we saw, like I think it was Jamie O'Hara talking to Neil Custis on Talk Sport, how Martial's not a number 9 that's going to get them to the title. And I think Man United's title worries in general are probably not based around Martial. But 17 goals playing for half the season with a pretty poor side, I think is pretty impressive. Can he get to 20? I don't see why not. If he keeps fit, and obviously we've known him be injury prone in the past, but he's shown last year that he can play a lot of games in a row, and maybe a bit like Danny Ings, perhaps he's put some of those injury concerns behind him. So as season totals go, I think it'll be close. I certainly wouldn't write Martial off. In fact, I'm just going to go out and say I think Martial will outscore Jimenez this year. So the Todd88 says, Salah is not the force he once was. Now, I think literally he hasn't been, has he? He scored the 303 points and he scored like, what, 258, 260 this next season. And last season he scored even less again. So he's literally not the force he was in terms of FPL points. But I think if you're saying this is kind of writing him off and not a good option, I think absolutely not. I don't see any reason why he won't score over 200 points again and why he couldn't start climbing to 250, 260. Now, one of the reasons for maybe, and I don't want to say his decline, but let's say his decline in points, certainly not performances, is because Liverpool have now got Mane playing absolutely brilliantly, almost on most days as good as Salah and sometimes even better. Whereas I think when Salah first came in, he was kind of the main man, whereas now they've got kind of 2 main men, and Mane's a really good option as well. From an FPL point of view, once you price those two the same, for me it's always going to be Salah over Mane, unless something miraculous happens where Mane is absolutely massively outperforming Salah, but I just don't see that happening necessarily. I'm sure their points will be close, but I just don't see Salah being massively outscored by Mane. That's all I would say. So is he the force he once was? Literally no. Is he still one of the best options in FPL? Absolutely. If all fixtures were similar for all players for the first kind of 4 to 5 game weeks, obviously they won't be, but if they were, Salah would be one of the first names on my team sheet. He's had a price drop, same price as Aubameyang, same price as Mane, only slightly more than Sterling or De Bruyne. And I've just not seen anything from his performances for Liverpool, his FPL points potential, especially at home, to warrant going without him. So is he literally the force he once was? No. Is he still a great force when it comes to FPL? Absolutely. And we're talking about Salah again here. So LFC19 Matty says, someone will break Salah's points record. No way. Absolutely no way. 303 points is incredible. Now, Luis Suarez got close to that as a forward. And I've talked about this in other videos where I think that Luis Suarez's record is actually a better performance than Salah's because he doesn't have clean sheets, he didn't have penalties and stuff like that. The 303 points, it's going to be a while till that's broken. Like, who would do that anyway? Mane could do it. I mean, Salah could break it himself. De Bruyne, Sterling, Aubameyang potentially could come close, but I just think the amount of returns you need is absolutely insane. And I just don't see that happening anytime soon. So I'm thinking about the players that are in FPL now, in midfield positions and in forward positions. To get to 303 points is some feat. Even like someone like Frank Lampard back in the day was around the 284 point mark, and he had like 10 seasons where, you know, he scored really well, and a lot of them, I think it was like 6 or 7 seasons over 200 points, but only once did he get close to that 303, and it was still 284, and he was another one with penalties. So yes, Aubameyang has penalties, he's a midfielder now. I think he would have scored around 233 last season. That was with about 20 goals. So you need to be getting close to the 30 goal mark, and you also need assists on top for it to happen. So for me, it's not going to happen. It would be nice, especially if I captain them every single week and cotton onto that early and get a really good rank, but I just don't see it. Amun Parman, I think that's how that's pronounced, it's the season of the forwards and we'll all be on midfielders. So yes, when the price has been revealed and when people have been doing their teams, they are focusing on midfield for the big hitters and maybe ignoring forwards a little bit. But I just think once fixtures come out, and once we look a bit more into our teams and start putting price points together and certain players here and then what can I afford elsewhere, I think people will start coming around to the forwards, because there's no reason why kind of Martial at 9 million, Werner at 9.5, Ings and Jimenez at 8.5, like I've mentioned already, cannot get close to some of those midfielders who are maybe priced a little bit more. Is it going to be the season of the forwards? I'm not completely sure. I do think 3-4-3 is probably going to be more popular than people think it is right now. A lot of us ended the season last year with 3-5-2, But I think 3-4-3 will make, I wouldn't say a comeback because it's always a very, very popular formation, but I think it's going to be better this year than people are currently giving it credit for. But is it going to be the season of the forwards? I don't think so. Give me any reason why De Bruyne, Sterling, Aubameyang, Salah and Mane will not score huge points again this year. Maybe if we talk about kind of £6 to £7 million midfielders, then I could see the forwards doing better. But when you start getting up to the £9 million price point, you got like Rashford and Son versus Martial and Werner. I think it's going to be very close. So it's not the forward of the season of the forward for me. But I do think they're going to do very well. And I do think 3-4-3 is probably going to keep hold out as the best formation for a lot of the season. We might see some 3-5-2s, but I think most people will start off with a 3-4-3 and at least have 3 forwards, even if it's like a 4-3-3 formation or something like that instead. So Auto Reclose FPL says Sheffield United to be relegated. Again, not one that I'm completely convinced on. Obviously, we have seen before, like second season is usually a lot tougher than the first one. But we see a lot of teams as well stay up, and they do stay up for kind of 5 or 6 seasons. And they kind of cement their place in the Premier League. And only after a while do they maybe start getting back into a relegation battle. The thing for Sheffield United is, as long as they keep the core of their team, they're very well organised, very well drilled. They all know what their jobs are. Maybe, the only thing I would say is maybe other managers will have cottoned on to how they play, because centre-backs overlapping is not something we've seen very often in the Premier League. So maybe managers will have cottoned on to that. From an FPL point of view, I wouldn't be massively drawn to their defenders unless the fixtures are really good, because they've all had a little bit of a price rise. And without Dean Henderson, I think that would be a massive miss. Maybe he'll go back on loan to them from Man United. There's been rumours of that, but we don't know that for sure yet. If he does, then suddenly, you know, maybe their defence is a great option again. I think a lot will depend on which goalkeeper they get in. They've talked about Ramsdale. He's been rumoured quite a lot. I think he's a good goalkeeper. I don't necessarily think he's as good as Dean Henderson, but I don't think he probably warrants playing in the Championship for Bournemouth. I think if he can get a move to the Premier League, that's a fair deal. I think he's a good goalkeeper. But from an FPL point of view, he'll probably be priced at $5 million, and that would really put me off going for him. So Sheffield United to be relegated, I don't think that will happen. I'll do probably a prediction video on relegation later on, but I just think they were so good last year. I don't think they're going to be as good next year. I don't think they're going to finish as high, but I could see them as a mid-table team for sure. So FPL Raptor says Sterling to outscore Kevin De Bruyne this season. Again, we're talking about season-long totals, which don't necessarily matter. But I can get behind this. I think Sterling for a lot of last season underperformed. He's shown what he can do post-lockdown. That's the kind of Sterling what you know and love from an FPL point of view at Man City. Is it going to be a massively big score from him that he massively outscores Kevin De Bruyne? I don't think so. I think it's going to be extremely close. Right now, De Bruyne is sitting at about 60% of FPL teams at the time of recording this, whereas Sterling's less than 10%. I don't think the gulf between them is that much. Here's what I will say, though. If Kevin De Bruyne keeps penalties, I think it's going to be extremely hard for Sterling to outscore him. I know that De Bruyne is seen as more of an assister. I know he slightly overperformed his XG and XA last year, but he does score goals anyway from open play. And Man City are a team like Man United that I think with their front three, with the pace in that attack, they are going to cause defensive problems and they are going to draw penalties. And if they get them, and Kevin De Bruyne gets them on top of an incredible amount of assists and already some goals to go along with that as well as being a bonus point magnet, I think it'll be difficult for Sterling to outscore him. But if Aguero or Jesus or whoever it might be gets penalties, especially if Aguero's playing week in, week out, he's probably more likely than Jesus. If he keeps the penalties or gets them back, however you want to word it, I think it'll be difficult for De Bruyne to massively outscore Sterling. So I actually think they'll be very, very close. I think we could see like a 10 or 15 point difference between either of them. For me, a lot of it comes down to penalties. If De Bruyne has them, he'll outscore Sterling, I think. Spurs Life, I think this is Tierney to be the highest scoring defender, not called Trent Alexander-Arnold. Not for me. Absolutely no way, in fact. I think the second defender that's not called Trent Alexander-Arnold, the highest scoring defender, will probably be another Liverpool defender, maybe Man City, maybe Matt Doherty or someone like that. I don't think it'll be Tierney, but it doesn't mean I don't like him as an option. 5.5 million is the most expensive price you can pay for an Arsenal defender. I do think he's got attacking threat. I think we saw that when he played in the Scottish League. Didn't quite get to see it last year because obviously he was injured for so much of it. He never really got a good run in the team. Arteta came in there and then he was kind of first choice left back, but still wasn't playing necessarily week in, week out, just because of the break and then having to play so many games in quick succession. But I do like him as an option. I do think he'll be more attacking this year. And if Arteta can continue to prove Arsenal to be a good defensive side, then for 5.5 million, he could be good value. Is he going to outscore every other defender that's not called Trent Alexander-Arnold? No way. So FPL Therapy says Werner will take time to adjust and won't start scoring until later in the season. I'm not necessarily sure about this one. I think he will probably hit the ground running. I think he's a really, really good player that's come from a really good league that's going into a team that's also really good, very attacking. We saw that last season. If Pulisic's fit, Ziyech has come in, if they can gel quickly, I think he will hit the ground running. At least that's where my money would be. I don't think he's going to be one of these players that takes time to adjust to the league. It'll depend where he's playing in that team as well and how Chelsea's set up. From what I've read, a lot of the times he was kind of playing off the striker and not necessarily as the main striker, whereas a lot of Chelsea fans seem to think he's going to be the number 9 with Pulisic and Ziyech flanking him either side, which would make sense with the players they got at their disposal, but potentially they've got to fit in Mount somewhere, Havertz somewhere if they sign him as well. So it'll be interesting to see. So maybe because they've got a few new players and players that didn't necessarily play all of last season like Pulisic, it might take a little bit of time to gel. But for me, my money is on him hitting the ground running and potentially making a mockery of that 9.5 million price tag. And lastly, Toothless Gibbon says, I will do badly. Now, this isn't a setup, but Toothless Gibbon is one of my patrons. And do you know why he's not going to do badly? Because he's signed up to Patreon. He gets to come and join the Slack, give his views, take some opinions from everyone else in the Slack channel. And if you want to join up to Patreon too, there is a link in the description below. It's all set up now. There's 3 different tiers, kept it nice and simple. You can go and read what's in each different one. There's video content coming on there later this week in form of a Q&A as well. So I'll be taking questions from patrons over for a video or stream, and then obviously through the season that will continue with a couple of extra videos as well as a WhatsApp setup as well. So if you want to come and chat to me one-to-one on WhatsApp, you can do that too. There's a tier for that. Absolutely depends on what you want to sign up for, but if you want to support me, support the channel even further and let me take it to the next level and do FPL stuff on Let's Talk FPL more and more, then make sure you click that link in the description below. Like I said, that wasn't a setup, but as soon as I saw him tweet me, I thought, wow, I've got to do that then. So there you go, Patreon in the link in the description below. If you've enjoyed this video, please do give it a like. I haven't done a video like this before, so the likes and stuff like that really help me know what kind of content you like to see. Subscribe if you are new around here, please do that. It's trying to get up to 100,000 subscribers by the end of this season, which is a really big task, but it doesn't cost anything to hit that subscribe button. So make sure you do, hit that notification. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. Cheers all.